Welcome back to the Woodworking Talk Show. By the way, Spotify now has a 5-star rating system in place for podcasts, just like YouTube used to. I wonder if eventually they're going to eliminate the button and then they'll add like a like-dislike buttons, and then they'll just remove the dislike count.
I got to look it up right now. I'm going to give it a 5-star rating.
Oh, good. I'll bet you anything they're going to start adding podcast reviews too. Would be the next step, I would assume. Anyways, if you're listening on Spotify, give this show a 5-star rating. Smash that rating button. Why? I don't know. Because it's there. Are you a podcast listener, Robert? Do you listen to podcasts?
I listen to the Chad and Steve podcast. The Woodworking Talk Show. I also listen to what's the one with Matt Cremona, Mark, and
Wood Talk. Yeah.
And Making It. Those are my 4 go-to podcasts.
Those are like the big 2. Those 2. Wood Talk started, it was like the first one. Man, he started that like in the 1960s or something. I think it's like really, really old thing.
The 1960s? Slight exaggeration.
It goes back a ways. Anyways, I am really happy to have Robert Dunn on as my final guest of 2021 to help me wrap up the year, because I know this is going to be fun. I know this because he's been a guest twice on my other podcast, Chad and Steve Have a Podcast. There's no pressure, though. What this means is that we can just talk about Chad behind his back.
Oh, yeah, this is just the Steve Have a Podcast.
It's just Steve Has a Podcast. You know, he started knitting because of that show.
Really? Did he follow through with his other obligations? I don't remember what they were.
I don't remember, but I was just wondering. Maybe he's going to like start collecting weird cars and fixing them up now since we had you on the show. But
I would approve of that.
Yeah, he showed me this little thing he had knitted after Christmas because we had Arne and Carlos on, who are they're like the knitting gods of YouTube.
Mm-hmm. The fireside chat Norwegians.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Anyways, Robert has 2 of the most entertaining channels on YouTube, and I really mean that. His main channel, I'm making air quotes for the audio podcast. His main channel is Aging Wheels, a channel he started in 2014 all about cars. It's not just about cars, though. It's mainly, I guess, weird and obscure cars and how he fixes them up and just kind of drives them around and gives his commentary. If you love cars, you just have to check out that channel. And if you're like me and don't really know anything about cars other than just to drive it to the supermarket and stuff, you'll definitely love Aging Wheels. It's really a car channel for the rest of us. But he started his second channel, a woodworking channel called Under Dunn in 2019. And as it approaches 100,000 subscribers, yet another silver play button, it's kind of become its own thing and is just as entertaining as Aging Wheels. Under Dunn is one of my favorite woodworking channels on YouTube because Robert brings a natural humor to everything, and he's kind of found a different and unique take on the whole YouTube woodworking genre. Well, hey, Robert, welcome back.
Hello, nice to be here.
Yeah, I thought this would be fun to talk to you about the woodworking channel because we've talked to you so much about your cars, but I'm probably still going to want to talk a little bit about your cars because the channel is. And
that's fine. I'm sure I'll naturally bring up car topics as well.
Right. What's the latest in the car thing? I know the last time I saw your show. Well, actually, the last thing I saw was you were driving around the Escargot.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Snail van.
I had no idea this thing existed, and it's literally looks like a snail, right? It's Nissan, right?
Yeah, Nissan Escargot, one of their pike cars, their retro-inspired pike cars, just one of 4 cars that they made when Japan was in an economic boom, and so they just made these cars that were all about style, but were otherwise just uninteresting, boring cars.
It's kind of a cool looking little thing, though. It's a cargo van, but it's really squatty. It's really short, I guess.
Really short. It's shorter than the Fiesta, but it's taller than some crossovers. Yeah. It's an odd shape, but it's designed to look like a snail. So I guess that's what the shape of a snail is.
Right. It even has like even the logo is kind of shaped like a snail. The S. It's just a bad pun. The S. Cargo.
Well, I think you mean an excellent pun.
What it is. It's like early dad jokes or something. I don't know.
I thought the name was strange until I realized it was inspired by French cars as well. So that's why they made it a French pun.
Right. So you went up to Illinois to test that out. How does that work out? Do people contact you and say, hey, just give our cars a try?
Yeah, I get a few emails. I don't get all that many emails because my main thing isn't really car reviews. I mostly talk about my own fleet, but occasionally someone will send me an email, and it'll be something that I just have to go make a video about because I have to have the people of the world know about this car or know more about this car in some cases.
Is there any cars that you've driven around that you were kind of like scared to get into?
The city car and the HMV Freeway that I drove, those were pretty good examples of that. The cheese wedge and the three-wheeled thing with the Briggs & Stratton engine. Those would be terrifying to drive on anything other than the city street.
Oh, wow. And you also recently, you finally updated your bus. I know you've been working on that bus off and on for a while now. It's like an old school bus. And this time, oh man, I felt for you on those side panels. You had to replace them all, right?
Yeah, I'm going to have to replace them all. I haven't gotten to that yet. I'm just going to get new steel panels and replace all of those side panels because on one side, on the whole bus, I decided to patch all of the screw holes that were holding the rub bars in place. On one side, I did an excellent job of that. On the other side, I screwed it up massively, and the panels are massively warped. In some places, it's irreparably warped. So I'm just going to scrap the whole thing, sunk cost fallacy, and just start from scratch.
Yeah, that's hard. You've already put in that time. You're right. You just want to think, well, now I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. I've got to just stay on course. And sometimes you just got to cut your losses, huh?
Cut your losses. You just keep thinking back to what Saul Goodman said when he was floating in that pool.
What did he say? I'm very trying to remember.
I don't remember what he was. He was talking about not being a lawyer anymore, and he said sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, the sunk cost. Oh, got it. I love that show, by the way. It's supposed to start. It's supposed to return, I think, in early 2022. So maybe like February.
Can't wait for it.
God, that's a long time between seasons, and I guess COVID didn't help any. But man.
Yeah. Also, Bob Odenkirk went to the hospital at some point during filming.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he had I don't know if it was a heart attack or something.
Oh wow!
Heart adjacent that he had happened to him, and he had to go to the hospital for a couple of weeks.
Yikes! Yeah, that's like the best show on TV. I can't imagine how they were able to follow up Breaking Bad with such a good show, and in some ways, it's like even more engaging than Breaking Bad. The
writer or writers is clearly completely honed his craft. I don't know how he could make a show that's better than that.
No, it's amazing. I'm really curious to see how it's all going to wrap up, especially with the future Saul, or the black and white version. What's the?
Oh yeah.
I can't think.
Cinnabon working.
Yeah, I can't think of what his name is in that, because that's got to somehow tie all into Breaking Bad, I'm sure. But anyway, here we are talking about Saul Goodman.
So woodworking?
Woodworking. Oh yeah, this is the Woodworking Talk Show where I talk sort of about woodworking. I mean, I invite people onto the show now, and when I invite them on, I have to say, well, it's called the Woodworking Talk Show, but I'll talk to people who make all kinds of things too. Just so you know. It's not. It's
the maker YouTuber talk show.
Yeah, it's just I just couldn't come up with a better name for it, and now I'm just stuck with this name. I don't want to change it, and I don't really like the word maker. It's an odd word to me. So it's all right, but
it's kind of an all-encompassing name. It can mean a lot of different things.
Do you have a hard time balancing now between your two channels, the automotive channel and now the woodworking channel? Because you probably didn't imagine that channel would become kind of its own standalone channel, did you?
No, I did not. I didn't expect it to take on its own life like this. Originally, I envisioned this just being the standard YouTuber's second channel, where it would be my dumping ground for anything that isn't Aging Wheels content. And then at some point I was getting into woodworking, and I decided maybe this should be the channel for that. So I started doing woodworking projects and makery type projects on it. And now it's taken on its own life to the point where if I see a commenter that doesn't know about Aging Wheels, I'm still taken off guard, because I just imagine my entire audience is people that I've gathered from my quote unquote main channel. but it's not the case. It has its own unique audience.
I kind of mentioned in the intro, but you have a different take on. I'm sure you've had some project videos. You don't have a whole lot of project-based videos on building a project on there, but I think you have an interesting take on this whole woodworking genre, especially recently as you've been, I don't know, testing out odd tools. In a way, it sort of reminds me of Aging Wheels. It's got that the same level of quirkiness to it, and so you recently started, I guess, how do you describe it? You started responding to, I guess you call them spam emails. Not really spam, but these.
They're not really spam.
We all get them.
Yeah, those emails that every YouTuber gets from Chinese companies that are hilariously translated in some cases. Some of them are okay, but they're just sent out to a massive email list. I don't know where they gather these names from, but they're all just trying to peddle junk on you. And I've gotten a lot from laser engravers, companies trying to market just really crappy diode laser engravers. For the people that are watching the video podcast, I got one right here. And I just, several months ago, my mom expressed interest in getting a laser cutter, like a Glowforge or something, but they're a lot of money, and she wasn't sure that she wanted to invest all that money in something that she wasn't really sure about. So I thought maybe I could use my YouTube connections to get her a free one. And then I saw one of these emails from one of these spam companies offering me a laser engraver, so I thought I'm going to reply to it, see what the heck happens to it, and it's sort of taken off from there, and I replied to several more, and now I've totally burnt out that concept, and I've absolutely stopped replying to any of these emails because I got too many replies of these companies demanding things afterward.
Oh, really?
Like I got the 2 Niji laser engravers, and they sent me, I actually recorded a bit in the video, but ended up cutting it out. They sent me 4 follow-up emails after sending me the laser engravers, demanding the title of the video. They wanted other stuff, too. They wanted the video to be in 4K because, according to them, that does better.
It does better.
Proof of that. And there was some third thing. They wanted links or something. But the biggest thing that stuck with me is they wanted to dictate the title of the video. Wow. And what they wanted to dictate the title of the video to was, quote unquote, add your feelings plus Niji Master 2S A4640 40-watt laser engraver.
Now that's a catchy title.
Oh, yeah, the catchiest of titles. So I didn't reply to them because they already sent me the laser engravers, and you don't get to decide the title of the video.
So you've done, I think, what a lot of us have wanted to do and have thought about, kind of wondering what would happen if you really followed through with some of these things. But when they send you that stuff, was it with any expectation of that you would give a link, or you would promote them, or anything like that, or what was?
I'm sure they had expectations, but I very strategically replied to these emails with absolutely no expectations. What I sent the same thing to all of these emails. Hi, yes, I'm interested. Here's my address. That's it. So I didn't say that I was going to make a video. I didn't say that I was going to do anything. I just said, send me the thing. Here's where you send it to. Some of them sent follow-up emails saying, okay, we have some requests. And those people that did that, I just completely ignored them. There was a lighting company that I replied the same thing to. Here's my address. And then they replied back saying, okay, we want a dedicated video. We're not going to send you any money, just lights. No, I'm good.
Yeah, I've gotten those too. I get a lot from some light company. It's probably the same one that they want me to do some outdoor lighting and stuff. And they also, we will send you free product. But I always love these things because they always start out with they've never seen anything I've made, but obviously they're going through a huge list because my channel name is long. It's Steve Ramsey, and I've got a dash woodworking for mere mortals. And they always say, dear Steve Ramsey dash woodworking for mere mortals, we love your content.
Yeah. I love the ones that go the extra mile and say, we think your excellent production quality is excellent, or some sort of horrible jumble of words.
When they say that, I'm like, well, you have never seen my videos if you think my production quality is...
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So they send you these lasers, and They were like of dubious quality. It looked a little sketchy as far as safety is concerned on some of these things.
The one that did have any safety features was just an infrared sensor or some sort of flame sensor, and that was the one that I gave to my mom, and she said that sensor just keeps going off erroneously and makes it impossible to actually use the machine. And the rest of them just have bump sensors, which isn't going to help anything, and they all have very eye-damaging lasers, and they ship with just glasses. So if you don't put the glasses on, you're going to be without vision for the rest of your life.
Oh, my God. Wow. I wonder how many people get those. I mean, where do you even find these things? Are they like, do you just search Amazon and that's how people are buying this stuff? Is that what it is?
Yeah, most of them are on Amazon.
Yeah.
Some of them, like the Ortour that I got, it's on Amazon, but their product listings on Amazon are like $100 higher than what's on their website. And I imagine that's the chief way people find these things.
Right.
So I don't know. I've lost interest in these laser engravers completely at this point.
You mean just these laser engravers or laser engravers in general?
I kind of want to say laser engravers in general. I'm sure the proper Glowforge type CO2 lasers are a step above and actual usable, but I don't really have any interest in them now.
Has anybody wanted to send you any CNC? You have a CNC though. You wouldn't.
Yeah, I had a company. Yeah. I actually reached out to the company's called Stepcraft.
Right.
I noticed they had sent a CNC router to David Picciuto and John Hess, and I thought that I might as well. Well, I sent John Hess a Patreon message to see if he could give me somebody's email so that I could email them, and he gave me the guy in Germany's email. I emailed him. And they said, yeah, we'd be happy to send you one. Here's our stipulations. And their stipulations were incredibly relaxed. It was like 2 videos in a year on Underdone, 4 videos in a year on Aging Wheels. And what they want for a video inclusion is just 10 seconds of milling time and a mention of the name.
That's amazing.
So it was the most doable contract ever. And then they sent me a CNC router, and I've been using the crap out of that thing. It's like totally revolutionized the way I make anything. It's my go-to tool now.
I love the title on one of your recent videos. I forced my CNC router to make a table for itself.
It's a robot. It does my bidding.
Right. But it was actually a really cool table, how you cut out the shapes and fit them all together. It's like if you're going to use a CNC, you might as well use the damn CNC for, what you can really get out of it, make these crazy shapes. And
yeah, I was just trying to have as much fun as possible, and in the process, I ended up showing a lot of the features of this CNC router.
Yeah, that was cool. Don't you think that's kind of a good way to use a CNC? Is try to do what you can't do with regular tools with it. Use it for that.
Yeah,
rather than just like cutting a square or something. Why would you?
It's very good for automating tasks and to doing things that you would otherwise need jigs for, like just cutting circles. I'm never going to make a circle cutting jig again. But where it really shines is stuff that you can't do by hand, like making that table with its crazy, I don't know what you'd call them, but there's some box joints in there, but there was also some puzzle piece type joints in there. I think that's where it really shines.
Well, did you have a background in, I don't remember, in computers or something, don't you?
I was a software engineer.
Did you just get tired of it?
Oh, yeah. I listened to the Woodworking Talk Show with Matt Cremona, and he shared my sentiments. Just sitting at a desk all day, doing abstract, non-tangible work. It gets tiring. And then there was also a job that I worked at where they practiced something called pair programming. So you had 2 people sitting next to each other, and you're both working on the same computer, and you're popcorning. They called it popcorn programming. You would go back and forth. One of you writes a line of code, or one of you writes a test, and then the other one writes a line of code to complete and pass that test. And it was just the most tedious, horrible work environment I could have imagined. There's no getting into the zone with pair programming. There's no, I don't know how to say this. You're mentally exhausted by the end of the day because you're constantly thinking and you're never on your own. It was just extremely tiring.
God, we just keep putting this at such a high pedestal. Like, you've got to learn computer programming. You've got to learn to be a coder to your kids. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's in her 30s, and she's dating, and she's using the, Tinder app. And she's like, I'm just so bored with these guys that like every one of their profiles is computer this, computer that. This is what I do. And she's like, these guys are all so boring. It's all they're putting like basically their software resume on their Tinder profile. It's like, no.
That's another thing I found is that people that are software engineers, that is their life. And if you're not living the life of a software engineer, you're just not as good at it. And that was definitely me. I was a mediocre software engineer because that was about more than just that.
But you're still able to use all those skills from that in your work that you're doing now. I know you made even just to program the laser cutters. I mean, you had to you get in there and do some shenanigans with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's more of a rare use case. But yeah, with the XTool, the built-in beta software, firmware updater that they included with it didn't work. So I had to go in, and on their website, they described a bunch of terminal commands to manually update the firmware, but their terminal commands were not straight copy and paste. So thankfully I had some basic knowledge of how to use the terminal so that I could actually fix that. But
well, what would somebody do like me who bought one of those just because, oh, this looks cool and get it? And I would have gotten to that point and then be like, well, that's it. I don't know what to do. I'm not going to go into the
I don't know what you would have done. If you have a Windows PC though, they have, and I think it was all in Chinese, so that would be another stumbling block. But they had a dedicated firmware update tool that you could download that would have solved that problem. But on a Mac, you would just been SOL. I don't know what you would have done if you did. I guess you could have fumbled around with the terminal commands until you eventually figured out what was going on.
That sounds like fun.
You're just messing with root directories and deleting files. What could go wrong?
Well, you also did some programming with, was it Arduino or Raspberry Pi? Do you use both of those? Because I know you used it on your spot welder. You made your own spot welder, right?
Yeah, I made a spot welder for batteries. That project was Arduino, and that was the first programming project I had done for like 3 years. So it was a very simple Arduino sketch file, the code for it. But still I had to look up the most basic of software keywords, like what a function is in, or I don't even call it functions. No, let's call it functions. Functions and methods. See, I'm really out of touch with software engineering. What a function, how it was defined in the C language that Arduino sketch files use. But yeah, that was a really basic use of Arduino, and I have done projects with Raspberry Pis before. And Raspberry Pis, when in my usage, it was just set up with the basic Noobs OS that you can download from Raspberry Pi's website, and then I wrote a Java program, a Java GUI program on top of that. The only thing I did with that was I made a little weather station for my grandma. Oh.
Seen what Matthias Wandel uses at Raspberry Pi recently.
Yeah.
He's been using it to test like strengths of boards. I don't know.
And
somebody's got to do it, I guess.
Yeah. He's even farther removed from software engineering than I am. I'm continually impressed that I guess he's done little practice things to keep up with his skill set.
Wow. Hey, let me ask you this. Okay, this is from somebody who's never done any metal work. What's the difference between the different types of welding, and what is spot welding compared to, say, arc welding?
Spot welding, a spot welder. I mean, I can. Wait, hold on. I'm confusing spot welding with tacking. Anyway, a spot welder.
Well, I need to know that too.
A typical spot welder. So I assume you're asking about the battery spot welder.
Oh, and that would be another question: is what's the difference between a battery? What do you mean by battery spot welder as opposed to just a regular old spot welder? Is there a difference?
So a spot welder, like the ones you can get from Harbor Freight or whatever, they're used to join two pieces of sheet metal. They've got two copper prongs that clamp the two pieces of sheet metal together, and they send a high amperage pulse of electricity through those two prongs, and then it just heat melts the metal together. Oh, okay. The battery spot welder does the same thing, but instead of two copper prongs that clamp two pieces together, you have two little probes that press down on what's typically a nickel or a nickel-coated battery strip, and then that spot welds with heat the tab onto the end of the battery cell.
You were pretty excited when that thing worked, weren't you?
Oh my God.
I loved hearing your reaction on that.
Time.
Oh, hearing that reaction on the video was hilarious. That was so cool.
I was surprised I even set up the camera for that, because I fully expected it to not work for the first time. I'm glad I got that reaction on camera.
Yeah. And then the other type of welding is like arc welding, right?
Yeah, arc welding, like your MIG welder, your TIG welder, your stick welder. There's probably other types, but it's the same basic thing. You have high amperage current coming out of a probe, but it's passing out of the probe and going into the workpiece and then exiting through a grounding clamp that you have somewhere else on the workpiece. A MIG welder is probably the simplest form. It's just basically a metal hot glue gun.
And you bring all of these, I guess, disciplines into your work with aging wheels, really. Mm-hmm. And then I guess, and it sort of all makes sense, because with aging wheels, you use all these different techniques, but you don't do a lot of woodworking on cars. So it's kind of cool that you have the second channel to do the woodworking on.
For making the Christmas projects, I inadvertently melded the two spaces together when I CNC carved an inlay on a cutting board, and I didn't have long enough reach clamps to clamp that inlay down to the middle of the cutting board, so I jacked up the Hugo and used the Hugo to clamp down the inlay into the middle of the cutting board. Used a car as a clamp.
I love it. How's the Hugo doing?
It still exists.
I love that.
I noticed that it started leaking coolant from a mysterious unknown place, but it's an excellent clamp.
It works great as a clamp. And so, and I guess I was sort of getting at this earlier, but how do you work out your content now between the two channels? Are you actively trying to think of things to do for the woodworking channel now that it's becoming its own thing?
I'm struggling with that. I think I'm going to go with a different approach for 2022. The big struggle I have is that I have way more ideas for my quote-unquote second channel. I have way more projects that I want to do for Underdone than I do for Aging Wheels. And I've had a big struggle balancing them, because in general, the projects for Aging Wheels take a lot longer than they do for Underdone, and it's hard to justify spending a lot of time on Underdone because it's just a smaller channel, and in general it'll bring in less revenue. So I tend to focus more on Aging Wheels, and all the ideas that I have for woodworking projects just gets shelved because I can't justify taking the break to work on a woodworking project for several weeks and then, in the eyes of my Aging Wheels only audience, just disappear for that amount of time.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one to follow. Do you think you're going to keep doing more of these types of videos? You said you got some more of these products in from China. Are you going to do more of that kind of content, or do you want to do? What are your thoughts on project videos?
I want to do more project videos. That's what I have the most fun with. Mm-hmm. Mostly I like to do stuff for the shop, and that tends to do better anyway. So it seems like a win-win situation. I've got a lot of projects planned that are projects for the shop. I want to finish out my table saw base. I want to redo my whole wood shop, but that's a big project, and other stuff like that. The review type stuff, like with the laser engravers, it was fun and it was an experiment, but I don't think I want to make that my main thing, just because I don't want to be known as the laser guy or the product review guy.
Well, you also did the product review. We talked about this a little bit on the other podcast. Was you reviewed that itty bitty table saw from? Was it from Harbor Freight? Was that where you?
Yeah. A little Harbor. I think it was called the Mighty Mite. The Mighty Mite.
And it was the most ridiculous thing ever.
I do want to still do occasional videos like that. I'm definitely not opposed to that. I just want to have a better balance between project videos and videos like that. I don't want to be just one thing. And also I view my Underdone channel as my outlet, my creative outlet for making these fancy projects that involve a lot of problem solving and creativity.
Yeah, your table saw rebuild is really amazing. I mean, you took an older table saw, I guess. I'm not sure what that was. And
I think it's an early 2000s Craftsman.
I mean, you pretty much rebuilt this thing because
Yeah.
it was lacking a lot.
It was lacking a heck of a lot. I also replaced the bearings and did some other small maintenance things to it. But that was a fun project. That was I don't want to say the first big project, but it was the first successful video I had on the Under Dunn channel. That video has a couple 100,000 views now.
Well, it was a 2-part video too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Something I don't think I would do now.
Well, that's hard to pull off. How did they do? Oh yeah, part 2 got like half the views or something.
Yeah.
That's the problem with those things. It's always, but that is an amazing thing that you did there, because you just kind of stripped this table saw down to like an arbor and a motor, and then just like rebuild. The thing came with no riving knife. No, I mean, it didn't have anything with it. Really.
No, it didn't have. It had nothing in the way of safety features. It didn't have a riving knife. It looks like it has a bolt hole where maybe some sort of, I don't want to say primitive, but primitive riving knife may have bolted into, one that doesn't raise up and down with the blade. It didn't have any sort of dust collection with it. So I added all of that stuff. The dust collection I didn't do the best job on, but it's effective.
Yeah, and then I think probably your most popular video is the dust collector that you made.
Oh yeah, that is
the Cyclone.
my most popular video. It's also my favorite project that I think ever done.
That was another one. You got really excited about that.
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah,
I didn't
describe
know
that. Describe that thing.
So there's a dust collector on the market made by Harvey Woodworking. They called it the dust processor. And the thing that fascinated me about that was their dust separation. So in the vast majority of dust collectors, they use a cyclonic separator, which basically just uses gravity to separate the dust particles from the air. It spins the air around in the cyclone, and all the heavier dust particles drop down into a bucket. But what the Harvey dust processor does is it uses centrifugal separation. So it's a couple stages. The first stage is gravity separation. It has a cone in the middle that flings the air out to the edges, and the heavier dust particles drop to the dustbin below. And then the second stage, it spins up the air and centrifugally separates the lighter particles of dust out, and they drop down into a bucket below. It's a lot more efficient than a cyclonic separator. But those Harvey dust processors are several $1,000s. So I wanted to see if I could make one myself, and I bought a clear acrylic tube to put the separator in, just so I could see everything happening. And then it was a big process of how do I make all these cones and spinny fins and these fancy shapes using the basic tools that I have. And I ended up with an end result that not only looks the part, it's incredibly effective, and I wouldn't have ever dreamed it would work as well as I imagined the Harvey one does. And it's still based on the blower fan from a Harbor Freight dust collector.
I think the interesting thing about that was, well, a couple of things. One, that you put LEDs behind it with a clear front, so you could actually see it working. Yeah. I think that was pretty cool. And secondly, that you just said you wouldn't recommend doing that after all was said and done.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing it. I could do it because I spent a couple of weeks on it, and it's a YouTube project. So I ended up making money from it. But if you were just a weekend woodworker, unless you just liked to do that sort of thing, which I'm sure a lot of people do, then I wouldn't recommend it, because you could just go out and buy it and have a much more functional thing right from the get-go instead of spending several weeks on it.
Yeah, I have people once in a while ask me to make tools, and it's always, I've had a lot of people, and by a lot, maybe like 10. People have asked, like, hey, why don't you make a bandsaw? You should really make a bandsaw. Can you think about making a bandsaw? And I'm like, well, I think, Matthias Wandel pretty much has that market covered. There's nothing. And to me, it just looks more frustrating and tedious.
I like the John Heiss approach, where almost everything in his shop is homemade. And with his table saw, he started out to prove that you don't need a table saw to make a table saw. He started out with just a circular saw screwed to the underside of a board. Then he used that to make a slightly bigger table saw and more permanent one. And then he used that slightly more permanent table saw to make his full-fledged permanent ultimatum table saw. But that approach isn't for everyone. I really appreciated watching that and watching him go through these stages and proving to everyone that you don't need a table saw to make a table saw, but the vast majority of people are not going to want to do that.
No, it's not. It's more, those are the types of videos people like to watch because it is fascinating to see him do that sort of thing.
That's the kind of videos I like to make too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just why I think people watch your channels, is because most of the stuff you're doing, we're not going to do, but it's really fun to watch you do it because the way you present everything on there is so funny. And you ask the questions that I think all of us would ask about everything you're doing.
I've got a project coming up that is, I want to call it a new tool idea, but it's not really. It's just a combination of two very common tools. And the question that I want to ask going into this project is, why don't they have a combination of these two tools? Can I make one and find out if it's a good idea? And if that goes well, I want to try to, just for fun, go through the patent process and see if I can patent it and maybe sell things. I just wanted to do it for the experience, just to say I have a patent, basically.
Wow, that's got me thinking, what two tools could you be combining? I'm going to be thinking about this the rest of the day now, wondering what could it be. All I could think about was like the Simpsons when Homer had the hammer, the automatic hammer.
I can tell you after the podcast.
Ooh, I get the inside scoop. So I'm going to go file for a patent right after I hear about it, too.
It seems like such an obvious idea that I just want to try it out and see if it is a bad idea.
Oh, that sounds cool. I can't wait to hear about that. A lot of guys trying to make tools these days. There's some channels that just specialize in that. They just are making woodworking tools. I think that's really cool to see.
Like
Andrew Klein. Yeah, is he?
Andrew Klein. That's a good example too.
Yeah, and he takes those, or tries to take them to the full marketing level, from concept all the way through. It's kind of fun to see that.
There was an ad for I don't remember what the name of it is, but it's a special Dado set that they sell at Rockler, and I saw that advertised at Rockler, and then I saw the Andrew Klein video where he basically came up with that idea, and then he said in the video description he was able to license it to Rockler. I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, that's nice. I wonder if that pays a lot of money to do that. I don't know. It's a pretty specialized field, so it's probably...
He's also got a full-time job on the side. I don't know how he balances it.
Yeah. Are your two shops connected? Like, where are you sitting right now? This is your wood shop?
No, where I'm sitting right now is my main shop, my automotive shop, I guess you call it.
I guess that's what
so it's a kind of a weird setup. The building that I'm in right now is the original building. It had a big pit in the floor for just a mechanic's pit in the corner of the shop. And added on to that was an automotive paint booth that I have since turned into my wood shop. And then added on to both of those buildings is an even bigger shop that is my bus room. So I've got 3 buildings here all conjoined together.
Are you getting tired of having the bus in there?
Yes, very.
It takes up a lot of space just sitting there.
Takes a lot of space. I would like to get that bus out of there so I can put all of my cars in that room, and then I can have this entire building for workshop space instead of workshop/storage for 6 decrepit cars.
What's your fleet now? Do you have anything new since last time we talked?
I just added one last week. I got a big old Mercedes wagon.
Huh. What year?
It's a 2005. It's an E500, and the previous owner put straight pipe exhaust on it. So it's a loud V8 wagon, and I love it a lot, but it's left me stranded like 4 times.
Oh, man. What are your other cars? And are they all functional now? Oh, they're not. Obviously, you're still working on them.
The Coda. I have 3 Codas. One of them is a functional driving car. The other 2 are prototypes. But the functional driving car has a CV shaft that is very broken and clicking right now, so I can't drive that. I've got a Volvo C30 that the clutch slave and master just went out on, which is why we bought the Mercedes, so we could do road trips for the holidays. And the Mercedes is working currently, but it smells like coolant because it's dumped its coolant out like 4 times since I bought it. The Hugo works. It's also leaking coolant. I've got a Reliant Robin, a Trabant, a Wego that doesn't work. The Trabant and the Reliant Robin, they do work, and I can drive them around like very strange normal cars, and I've got a pickup.
God, I'll bet you draw so many looks when you drive around those cars. It's the Reliant Robin, that's a 3-wheel car.
Yeah.
And it's just so odd looking, you know.
I get some people that'll ask me, "What's it like driving on the right side of the car?" And then I'll just look at them and say, "It's more different that it has 3 wheels. Why are you asking that question?"
Yeah, that does seem like an odd question to ask, right? When you're on the right side of a car, this is really a dumb question, and it's a manual transmission. Is the stick shift on your left hand?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know if I could get used to that.
I got used to it immediately, and I didn't expect that. It feels like no different now. In fact, I had someone else drive the Robin a couple weeks ago, and they were having trouble finding a gear. So I was in the passenger seat, and I reached over with my right hand, and I suddenly had no idea where the gears were because I'm so used to driving this thing with my left hand.
Wow. And so you're going to just keep those cars because those are just, you just love having them now.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever imagine selling them. Maybe the Hugo I could sell, but I'll have to get it completely sorted before I get rid of it.
Yeah, I'll bet you it's probably the Reliant Robin that draws the most attention, or is it the Trabant?
It's a toss-up. It's a toss-up between the Robin and the Trabant. The Robin definitely draws a lot of attention just because of its 3-wheeledness. I think if it had 4 wheels, then people would mistake it for maybe a Ford Festiva or something. But the Trabant does not look like anything modern or anything from this, world, frankly.
The Trabant is just this weird. It's the Eastern Germany car, right?
Yeah. Eastern German communist car made of cotton. The 2-stroke engine helps draw attention too.
Yeah, I just always seem to remember seeing those cars when I would see old films, in the 80s or something of Eastern Bloc countries, and it's like, oh, it's those little cars they drive around in over there.
It's similar to the Citroen 2CV. If you want to make a scene look French, you show a Citroen 2CV. If you want to make a scene look communist, you either bring up a Lada or a Trabant.
Anything that you're looking to get that you've been on the prowl for?
I've been on the prowl for a lot of things.
What's top of the list?
Top of the list, I want to import some cars from Japan. I'm not thinking anything super interesting. I want to just start with some mini trucks, some like a Suzuki Carry or maybe a Honda. Don't remember what their K truck is called, but you can buy those in Japan for less than $1,000, and by the time you include shipping cost for each truck, it's only like $2,000. So I thought about doing that, and then I could sell those pretty quickly just to experience the importation process and see what that's like and see if I want to continue that for the future. And I think that would be the easiest way to start that. It may be another business venture if I can figure out a way to reliably import cars from Japan or other countries like Hungary. But mostly I just want to do it for fun.
Yeah. But you would import them, maybe fix them up and resell them? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah. My initial thought was to import 2 K trucks, keep one for myself, and then work on the other one and sell it for double, maybe even more, the price that I bought it for, so that I could essentially get 2 trucks what do I want to say? Get 2 trucks and keep one and have it basically for free.
Nice. When I was a kid, they had this car. I'm a lot older than you, but this was the 80s. And I remember there was a car. I think it was Isuzu or Suzuki. I don't remember. It was it was like a truck, but I think it was called a Brat. Have you ever heard of this? And
Subaru Brat?
Subaru, that was it. Yeah. And it had seat. It was like a pickup truck sort of, but it had these 2 like captain seats in the back bed. It had like handles on them you could hold on to if you wanted to ride in the back of the truck.
Yeah, those plastic seats were put in the bed so they could call it a passenger vehicle, so that they could skirt around the chicken tax that put a pretty hefty tariff on imported pickups.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's why they had those rear-facing seats in the bed.
Wow. I wonder if you could... It probably wouldn't even be legal to ride in that today.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I've heard from a lot of people that those handles are way too close to the seats, and no one of reasonable size could even fit back there.
Oh, that's funny. getting back to the woodworking, Woodworking Talk Show. What was an interesting mix of materials, well, not really materials, but techniques, was when you did the engagement ring box, and then you'd also made the engagement rings. But I wasn't exactly sure how you made those. Were those made from like a nut or something, like a brass?
Yeah. So those were basically my own copying of another viral video I saw. I think the guy was in Brazil, and he was a jewelry maker who took a couple of brass nuts and then turned them into really pretty rings. And on the top of the brass nut, he also included a diamond. I didn't do anything near that fancy, but yeah, I started with brass nuts that I bought off Amazon, and I turned them down on the wood lathe with some metalworking carbide brazed tools held in place with a vice grip. It was probably one of the most dangerous things I've done. At any point, those tools could have grabbed and then sent that vice grip flying across the shop. But that was just the gist of it. I just clamped down some brass nuts and then ground them down to shape with some metalworking, metal lathe tools.
But I like how you did that, just because you had to have something to put in the box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you made these beautiful boxes, little engagement ring boxes.
Yeah, I was really happy with those projects. I didn't expect them to turn out to be anything fancy, but they look really nice, I think, anyway.
When's the wedding?
Yeah, we're not getting married. I call her my wife.
Oh,
I call her my wife on video, but we decided we don't really need to go through a wedding ceremony. We can just live together and act married. What difference does a legal ceremony make?
There is no difference. No, it is kind of a silly, it's silly formality.
Although we told that to my grandma, and she thinks that we're splitting up now, so that was maybe the wrong thing to tell her.
She was wanting a big, huge wedding she could go to.
Pretty much.
That's funny. What's any more? Another project I liked of yours was all the drawers that you did on your cabinets in your shop.
Yeah,
that was
a good example of a project that I enjoyed a lot, but didn't get a heck of a lot of views.
Yeah, but the drawers, God, is there anything just more monotonous than? And you made like 28 drawers on that thing, I think. Or
yeah, the only thing more monotonous than the drawers was I made all the drawer slides.
The drawer slide, and that was a John Heiss. Those were his slides too. Right?
That was a John Heiss thing. Yeah.
Wow.
I really enjoyed that after I released it, getting a comment on the video from John Heiss himself.
Yeah.
I am to the level of some of these other YouTubers that I look up to, but still getting a comment from them makes me really happy.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's nice to see that people are interested in what you're doing.
I saw Matthias Wandel commented on the go-kart video I did on aging wheels, and I was giddy with excitement from that.
Was it a nice comment?
Yes, it was Matthias nice.
He's probably listening to this show right now.
Oh,
he's gonna leave me a cranky comment.
He had a very different viewpoint on my go-kart project on aging wheels. It's 2 failures in a row that I've done, and he left a comment with his guess of why maybe the motor wasn't working, and it seemed like a really good idea. And he had an idea that no one else had, which was to put the Hall effect sensors outward of the motor so that maybe the magnetic field of the motor stator wouldn't interfere with the Hall effect sensors. I didn't follow through with his advice, and I haven't even touched the go-kart since.
It's probably right.
Approach.
It's probably right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He pretty much knows if he's going to leave a comment, it's probably right.
Yeah.
John Heiss, though, I get I probably get more people asking to get John Heiss on this show than anybody else.
Really?
Yeah, it would be fun to talk to him.
Sometimes he seems like he's just in a world on his own, like he lives on an island somewhere in the middle of Canada.
I think he does. And he's got a second channel too. Well, he's got, I don't know, 2 or 3 channels.
He's got 4 channels.
He's got like a rant channel where he just goes in there and rants. I like the whole rant genre on YouTube. Usually it's these guys in their cars, and then they just go crazy in their front seat of their car.
I haven't seen any of those, but I've been compared to those. I've had a few people tell me that they've told their friends that I'm an automotive YouTuber, and what they immediately assume is that I'm the YouTuber that sits in their car and rants about things.
Oh, right.
No, that's not quite what I do.
Yeah, I'm trying to start my second channel up again. I want to start posting. There's a real joy to being able to just kind of post what you're interested in or your hobbies or stuff, and not really give a rat's ass if anybody watches it or not.
Yeah.
But see, now that your channel's getting bigger, it's like, oh well, then now it's a real thing.
Yeah, I'm still trying to keep that mentality. At the beginning, what I was doing is, after I finished an underdone video, I would just straight post it without all of the other red tape. But now I'll give it an early release on Patreon. That's another thing I've struggled with, is what do I do with my Patreon audience? So my Patreon audience wants to see this underdone content. It seems like a better business move to split Patreon into Aging Wheels and Underdone, but the audience wouldn't like that very much, and a lot of them would have to double support and double dip. Or they feel like they would have to, and they want early access to the woodworking content too. But now I've started, it's its own legitimate thing, so I've started posting early access on Underdone, so it's got the whole red tape behind it, same as Aging Wheels does. The difference is that most of my Underdone videos don't have sponsorships, so that helps a little bit. But
you have just the one Patreon, or do you have one for each channel?
No, I just have the one Patreon for both of them.
Yeah, and see, I think that makes sense because it's you people are supporting.
I need to change the branding of it a bit, because right now it's called Aging Wheels. It's just an Aging Wheels Patreon page. I think I'll just change it to my name and then make the banner for the page both Underdone and Aging Wheels, and I'll make it say Robert Dunn is creating automotive and woodworking content, so they can support either one.
That makes sense. And then it's also and see, that's the thing with YouTube has their memberships they do now, but that's related to a channel. So you wouldn't be able to do that cross. You would have to be
I hadn't even thought about
one
that.
for each channel, which, but I know a lot of people
enabled that just because that would be an extra step that I don't want to have to deal with, but I hadn't thought about that approach. That's
the same with me. I had a call with YouTube. They wanted to back when they were starting the memberships, and I was kind of interested in it, and then I thought, realistically, do I have the energy to put in all this extra content and do these? They said you could do live streams, and I'm like, yeah, I know you can, but there's a million things I want to do, and it's just hard for me to find the time to do it, and especially now if I want to do like my second channels. You know what I did? I just rebranded my second channel again. Now it's Steve Ramsey Plus.
Going the Tom Scott approach?
Yeah, exactly. I saw him. I'm like, I should do the plus. Everybody's got a plus now, so there you go.
I thought that branding for Tom Scott's second channel was kind of pompous until I saw his title cards that say Tom Scott plus whatever the guest he has on.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense in a sentence.
Yeah, he's another guy I would like to talk to. Is Tom Scott.
Oh yeah,
boy, that guy just kills it. He's been around forever. Do you ever watch any of his really early videos?
Oh yeah.
Long
My favorite is
all.
the two cymbals and a snare.
Oh yeah, where they throw them off. Yeah, that was pretty good. How was your Christmas?
Oh, it was excellent.
Yeah.
Made a lot of woodworking projects, and I did them off camera, so that was a nice relaxing experience.
Nice. What kind of things you make?
I made a flower box. I made a sign, just a sign for my mom to put on her little shed, and I made a cutting board. And I fully utilized the CNC for all of those, so they were just pretty normal woodworking projects. Didn't take a heck of a lot of skill, and they didn't take very long. But I did V-carve inlays on all of them, so it just took them to the next level with a minimum of effort. For the sign on the front of my mom's shop, I did a V-carve inlay onto a thick oak board, and the inlay was Peruvian walnut. And the seam between the inlay and the baseboard, there wasn't one. It was totally seamless, and it was a robot doing my bidding, so it felt weird to take credit for how good this thing looked. But it looked completely perfect. It almost looked like it was painted on, but it was painted in a wood grain stencil paint.
And what are you going to be doing are you doing anything New Year's Eve? Are you the kind of guy who goes out partying?
No. I was considering going to an estate sale. There's a car collection in the boot heel of Missouri that is happening on New Year's Eve, but I don't think I'm going to go to that.
Yeah.
I'll probably end up with something if I go to it.
You know what I do on New Year's Eve and and this is really dumb. I've been doing this for years. Is I turn on the Sci-Fi Channel has the Twilight Zone marathon.
Oh yeah.
And it's the dumbest thing because I could watch it on Netflix, I'm sure, or wherever, and they'd be uncut and everything. But for some reason, I just turn it on. Yeah. I just leave it on all day long. I come in and out. I'll watch a little bit of, I'll see Shatner on the airplane or something. Oh yeah, there's that one, and I walk away.
Yeah, I don't think there's any of those Twilight Zone episodes I haven't seen just because of that yearly marathon they have.
Yeah, it's so dumb. Commercials and all. And I think they edit them out, too. I don't even think you get the full episode there. But I just have it on. Just background noise, I guess.
When I was a kid, I would watch I Love Lucy on TV Land. And I learned later on that those episodes I was watching, they were doctored. So they could fit more commercials in. They sped up the actual episode. So I Love Lucy was a little bit higher pitched than normal.
Oh, wow. That's weird. Well, do you have any big plans for either channel Underdone or Aging Wheels for 2022?
For Aging Wheels, I'm going to work on the bus. January is going to be bus month. And then after that, I need to gradually go through all of the problems of all the cars in my fleet. For Underdone, I want to try to get to more projects. I didn't do as much as I would have liked to last year, so I've decided that I'm going to popcorn back and forth. I'm going to do one Aging Wheels project and or video, and then do an Underdone project. Do an Aging Wheels video, do an Underdone project, and hopefully go back and forth between the two. And since I had trouble last year with some of my projects going too long, I think I'm going to try to limit myself to 2 weeks per project, because I had one project on Aging Wheels last year that took me 6 weeks because I kept running into problems. So I think if it takes 2 weeks or more, then I'm just going to stop working on it and then move on to something else so that I can keep the progress going. Because what I had problem with last year was just keeping progress going. It felt like I didn't get anything done, even though I was actively working on something most of the time.
Yeah, and some of those projects, I mean, you've just got so many, things to deal with on them, and I'm sure you have to get parts for them, so that takes time, and it's just not. You
get parts, or something doesn't work as you expected, so you have to spend time figuring out why it didn't work, and then you have to order parts when you do figure out why it didn't work.
Yeah, and then your woodworking ones, you get some pretty long projects on there too, pretty involved.
Yeah, I'd like to do more of those. I'd like to do more of those this year.
Oh, that's great.
I've got some just shop finishing up things that I'd like to do. I want to automate my dust collection system. I want to finish out the table saw base. I never once put drawers in it. I need to finally do that.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, the shop's looking good, though. I like it.
I need to work on the echo in there at some point, because it used to be a paint booth, and all the walls are metal and sealed, so it has a heck of a lot of echo and reverb in that room.
Yeah, that's the way my shop has always been, really echoey, and I don't have a lav mic or anything, and so all of my videos are just but I've just kind of learned to embrace it, and that's just the way it is.
I even get comments on in that room when I film videos, and
they
really bother me too.
Oh, is it the echoing?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't noticed it being that bad. Maybe I'm just used to my own echoey videos. I don't know.
It might be because I'm going back and forth between the two rooms. I've insulated this room, so it's very sound deadened. And then I go into the wood shop, and it's the original insulation that they put in 1972 or whatever. So it's just awful.
All right.
Stark difference.
Well, that went fast. Robert, I want to thank you for joining me on the Woodworking Talk Show. And congratulations on the success of 2 channels.
Yeah, thanks.
You should be hitting that. Should be getting that silver play button pretty soon, I'll bet you, on the Woodworking, on Underdone.
Hopefully. Never thought it would get to that point.
That's crazy. That's really fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you've got coming up in 22 on both those channels. I really enjoy them. Excuse me. I encourage everybody to check out both of Robert's channels, because I guess it's hard for me to describe the way you present your videos is unlike anybody else is doing, and the way you edit them, and they're just funny. They're just really engaging to watch. I really enjoy them.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. And for everybody listening, I want to thank you for your continued support for this show. I've just been having a blast doing these, and I'm kind of blown away at how popular it's become in just a short time now. So just so you know, I'll be taking a short break from the podcast, and I'll be back in just a few weeks. Happy New Year, everybody.